Come on over here, Tom. This is my partner in crime. He's the camera guy.
He's a cameraman.
Thanks, Tom.
You got it, buddy.
You're doing a good job.
You got it.
All right. Okay, ready to go. Okay, here's our patch. You can't really see it because it turned out really nice. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. But the patch area is right in here. But even though you can't see it, I'm going to tell you the types of things that I'm going to do now. I see small little imperfections, so I'm going to take my 6-inch knife and I'm just going to kind of wipe off some of the imperfections, because what we're going to do at this stage is we're going to do some light sanding. Before we do the light sanding, I can see just little areas that I'm going to knock off. That way I don't have to use a sanding pad very much. I don't want to sand off too much. I'm just going to wipe it down a little bit. And at this stage too, if you're not 100% happy with your patch, you can always do a skin layer. It's called a tight skim. I kind of did that on mine, but if you're not happy with it, you can take a tight skim, take the same material that we used for the finish coat, the compound, the wet compound on the last patching that we did, and just to take a light, tight skim coat on it. What you're going to do is you're going to put some mud on there, just going to lightly pull on it, and just skin over the entire area. I'm not going to do it right now because we're ready, but I'm just showing you by how I'm holding this. As you're putting up there, you just kind of want to hold it loose and pull it over nice and gently over the entire area. Then you let that dry. When it dries, it's going to be almost, well, on a light off-white paint color. It's going to be a light white color. And you'll be able to know, because you don't want to paint over it until it's all the way dry. Especially when we sand, you don't want to get into the back coat. So we let this dry overnight. It looks all nice and dry, and we're ready to do some sanding. But just a couple other things, like when you're doing the outside on your last coat, when you're doing the outside, you want to hold your finger on the outside edge. You want to put more tension on the outside edge as you're going. You don't want to do the same. You'll get the knack of it. So on the outside edge, you want to put your finger kind of over here, and you're putting more pressure on the outside of your knife, and kind of let the inside kind of float just a little bit as you're going around. It's just a slight tip. I'm just showing you now is all for the last coat. Watch this entire video, by the way, before you start your project. Very important. Okay, so now I do that on all of my patches. I got 3 little patches here. I'm going to wipe them down first, and then I'm going to show you what I do to sand the patches. So I'll be right back. Okay, this is what I'm going to use to sand my patches. It's just a little hand sander, it's called. I get a lot of control by using this, especially for small patches. Bigger jobs, they have a sanding pole where it's attached to a pole, but I'm just going to get up on the ladder and patch or sand with this. Now this comes out looking like this first, and what you do is you take this and then you're going to fold over the edges and clamp it down. So that's how it's held on there. This is 100 grit sandpaper. Now, as you can see, this sanding pad I've used for some other jobs. It's not as new as this one. It's not as gritty. It's already got a little bit of sheetrock dust in here. I tend to like this for my patches. If you have a brand new one, that's okay too. It's just when you first use it, you want to make sure you don't sand too hard. What we're trying to do here is we just want to lightly sand off our patches. So we're not going to do it too hard. Okay, so this is what we're going to use for our patch. Okay, I'm ready to sand. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this, I'm just going to gently Go over it. I'm not going to go very much. I don't have to do very much. You can see it's going to get dusty in here. So just do it a little bit. You can wear some eye goggles. You can wear a little dust mask when you're doing this. And on the outside edge, it's critical that I get the outside edge and blend it in with the existing. But I'm just going to take small strokes. I'm not going to take off too much. The trick is having a nice smooth surface. So like I say, if that last coat of tight skim, if you feel you need to touch it up a little bit before you sand, go ahead and do that. I don't want you to leave big high ridges or voids and think, oh, I'm going to sand it way down. This will be fine. The thing is, we're just sanding the top coat of our finished mud. We don't want to get down into the quickset. As I told you before, if you get down into the quickset, when you paint this patch, the quickset takes the paint differently than this finish coat. The quickset is rough, it's porous. The paint soaks into there differently than it does the finish. That's why you don't want to patch, you don't want to paint over quickset materials. Even if you think you get it nice and smooth, just like the finished wall, believe me, trust me on this, you don't want to patch, you don't want to prime and paint over a quickset patch. No way, no how. It will not blend in. I don't care if you use the exact same paint as everywhere else, you will always see that patch. And it's not because you didn't do a good job smoothing everything, it's because the paint's going to take to the quickset differently than this. Okay, so we're just lightly going to sand this all the way around. You can feel it with your hand if you want. You want a nice light on here. If you see little hair-like imperfections, if you want to lightly sand it and see something, if you don't feel 100% comfortable with it, you can always go over it and do some little touch-up with your sheetrock mud again. Not your quickset, but the other material, the lightweight material or your all-purpose sheetrock mud. If you do that, then you're going to have to let that dry all the way before you start painting. So, you know, it depends how long you want to spend on your patch. Patching and painting, 2 days, 3 days, your project extends longer, so keep that in mind when you're doing it. Okay? Okay, so once we get everything, you're going to either take a broom or you can take a rag. You're going to want to wipe off the excess of the dust, because we want a fairly clean surface before we start installing the paint. If you have a really dusty surface, your paint's not going to stick very well. So see, when I wipe that off, I don't know if you can see it, but I can see there's dust coming off of my patch, and that's what I want. Okay, so I'm going to do a good job. You can do that with a paintbrush. You can do that with a broom and lightly do that. You can do it with a rag. Whatever you got will work. So once we do that, I'm gonna do the same thing to my other two patches, and then I'm gonna be ready to paint. One important tip for you before you start sanding your project. In here we're in a confined area. We took the door off so that we had enough room in here so we didn't scratch the door. At this point, what you should probably do is put the door back on the hinges, close the door, make sure your air conditioning or your heater is off, make sure any exhaust fans are off, make sure you have things pulled up. If you want some mirrors to cover, some countertops to cover, anything of that nature, what you want to do now is you want to keep everything covered up, because this dust is very fine particles. Once it gets in the air, if the air is moving, it could go into other rooms, so that's the reason to put the door on. We don't want it to go out into the other bedrooms, hallways, whatever. So be prepared before you start sanding. Then before you get ready to start painting, what you want to do is just stay out of the room for maybe 10 minutes or so. Let some of the particles float down to the ground. You're still going to have some, but that'll keep your mess to a minimum.